Good evening. Welcome to a meeting of the Board of Education of Somerset Hills. Please be advised that this and all meetings of the board are open to the public and media consistent with the Open Public Meetings Act, and that advance notice required therein has been provided. Board goal setting took place in the first section of the meeting, and here we are back into public. Yes. Can I have a motion to return to public?
Motion to return.
Second. Thank you. Yes. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Baker.
Here.
Ms. Cooper.
Here.
Mr. DiGiacchino.
Here.
Mr. Nail.
Here.
Mr. McDonald.
Here.
Mrs. Santoro.
Here.
Mrs. Tober.
Here.
Ms. Virtue.
Here.
Ms. Birch. Here. Mrs. Lees. Here. We do not have any correspondence this evening. Okay. Report of the superintendent.
Good evening, everybody. We've got a couple of things up this evening. We have our student reporters from the middle school to start us off, and then we will have our reporter from the high school. We've got some students from the high school who we want to celebrate for their national merit recognition. And then Dr. Nigel will be talking to us about the proposed schedule for next year at the high school. So we're going to start with Marley and Ella, who are getting really good at this. Lots of
So, hello. Our sports had an amazing fall season. We have lots of sports news to share. BMS girls soccer lost 3-1 in a hard-fought semi-final game to a still undefeated defending champ Chesterton. This year, the team improved by winning 5 more games and scoring 21 more goals than last year. Congratulations to all the 8th graders on the team, including Soleil Miner, Gina Malik, Ava Highland, Ashley Hartnett, and captains Courtney Davis and Greta Pugh. They will be missed, but the future is very bright for BMS girls soccer.
BMS boys soccer team finished with a good season with a final record of 4-6-1. The boys had some exciting games and finishes. The team lost to the first seed Forum Park, Ridgedale Middle School, in the league tournament but played a tough game. Many returning players to next year's team, BMS's boys soccer is successful next year. Boys beat Del Bar and Madison during the season. 8th graders who did a great job were Spencer Saltz, Alan Valerga, Aiden Viga, Nick Milani, Anthony Ostillo, Aurel Ferreira, Chris Dietrich, Cody King, Kyle Morris, and Charlie Gebel. You guys will be missed.
So BMS cross country also had an excellent season with 43 students participating in 11 meets, with none of the meets held at our BMS course. There were 12 5th grade students on the team this year. All of the students showed improvement from the start to the end of the season. At the team races, our boys team came in 5th out of 10 teams in our group, and girls came in 6th out of 10. We had some standout runners in our league grade and team races. For the boys team, Michael Dooley came in 1st out of 133 runners in the league grade and team races. Bertie Watt finished 3rd, Jack Rutz finished 6th, Richie Jobisi finished 17th, and Julian Bonk finished 22nd. Michael Dooley placed 3rd overall in group 2nd championships among all grades. Girls' top finishers included Spencer Sorge, 16th out of 126 of 7th grade girls, and Jane Stauffer, 19th out of 133 girls for 6th grade.
While our field hockey team finished 3-7, their skills improved over the season and had a few exciting wins. We are very pleased with the improved skills and the team development this season. We had some star 8th graders, Megan Robinson, Candace Flaker, Haley Bosworth, Riley Oganowski, Jackie Silverman, Jane Lewis, Sophia Parente, and Tessa Mule. Girls lost to Mendham Township 3-0 in the league tournament, but held a strong Mendham team to scoreless first half of play. Recently, the 5th and 7th graders both had their canteen. The 7th grade was on Friday, from October 25th from 3 to 4 as their usual canteens are. While in the cafeteria, there was dancing and snacks. In the gym were basketball and soccer that you could play in case you did not want to be in the cafeteria the whole time. Everyone had a great time. The 5th grade canteen was on October 17th. The feedback in which the 5th graders gave our student council representatives was very positive and full of compliments on how great everything was. The 6th grade event is coming up in December, and the 8th grade is not until March, but the 2 that have passed have been a success.
On Tuesday of Red Ribbon Week, which was last week, we had a Mix It Up Day. It's a national school across the country where at lunchtime, people sit with people they might not usually eat with. This year, everybody sat with different people in their houses. After everybody cleaned up after eating, we played a game of Kahoot, which is a trivia game made up of different questions. This Kahoot was about school and our college houses. A sample question could be something like, what was the mascot of Duke? One answer could be the Red Hawks, another the Blue Devils, an Eagle, and so on. And on your computer, you would select an answer for points. Rutgers won the overall Kahoot in grades 5 through 8.
For Red Ribbon Week, Monday was Wear Your Favorite Sweatshirt Day, and the slogan was sort of being drug-free is no sweat. And so Tuesday you put a cap on drugs by wearing a hat. On Wednesday you wore red because it was Red Ribbon Week. On Thursday we teamed up against drugs by wearing your house colors. Last but not least, on Friday, we lay off drugs on Hawaiian Day. A Bulldog team participated in the Morristown Hunger Walk on October 19th. Our team raised $460 in the fight against hunger. EMS Bulldogs Fight Back Against Hunger was our team name.
At the end of the month, another winner of the houses our health groups will be announced, and the flag will be raised up high. The winner of September's competition was Duke, Health Group 1. Our flag has been raised for the past month under the American flag. We cannot wait to see who will come out on top. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, girls.
Hello, everybody. So starting off with a little summary of last month's events, back to school night, which was very successful. I'm a peer leader, so I always find it really fun kind of taking parents around the school and getting them a little taste of what we go through. So as far as student academic life, last month, or actually this month, sophomores and juniors did the PSAT on October 16th. So we'll see if we have any potential national merit scholars, which are here also as well. We also had a fall award ceremony at the beginning of this month. I believe it was October 10th. Students were recognized for academic excellence, community service awards, specific foreign language awards as well. So it was really nice celebrating everybody's achievements. As far as student spirit, it seems this year we're particularly into student spirit. We actually had a second spirit week prior to last month's, so that's really exciting as far as that goes. Guidance is still going on with the sessions, particularly to help students with any stress or any kind of obstacles they might be facing in order to just talk about it in general. To celebrate publications, the Crimson won multiple second place awards for excellence in journalism, and the yearbook also won an AJ Platinum, so congratulations to Mrs. O'Brien, Ms. Hunkley, and the staff for doing such a great job. Bernard's Theater, the opening night for the fall play, it is A Mystery at Wimberley Manor, will be on November 22nd, so we're really excited to see that next month. As far as National Honor Society, we did kickstart our tutoring program, but we will actually be having our first blood drive of the year on November 22nd, so that should be really exciting as well. Sports, boys soccer won yesterday's game 3-2 against North Star Academy, and they get to move on to the second round of states. So keeping our fingers crossed for them because they will be playing on Friday against Madison. Girls soccer unfortunately ended the season on Monday. Field hockey girls also did. However, they have back-to-back county champs for the third year in a row. So that's pretty exciting for them, pretty impressive. Boys football is currently 6-1. and they have a game tomorrow. It is senior night. They're red out. So again, also crossing our fingers out for them. As far as the senior class, as many of you will know who are parents, November 1st is coming up. It's not the first deadline, October 15th was, but I think as a general, November 1st is the most common deadline, so 3 days away. Homecoming court was last Friday. It happened during the game. Basically, we voted on who we wanted to be homecoming king and queen via a Google form throughout, I believe, 1 or 2 days, and then they were announced during the football game. They got to go in the middle of the field, and it was pretty funny to see everything. The fundraising has been really good as well. Specifically, we've been teaming up with Chipotle, and every single meal we get 33% of the profits for both prom, but also project graduation, which is really awesome. Student leaders were chosen by Dr. Nigel, and we had our first meeting on the 18th. Kind of talking about, all the school activities and kind of what's going on around the school, what our opinions are on certain things. One, I guess, issue, so most of you know about senior privileges. It allows us to go into town and get some food. However, TD Bank has closed the gates, so we are unable to get through the path that kind of goes through town. So if, we're kind of seeing what we could do about that as far as that goes. And the new school policies, we have a new policy that was introduced in attempts to restrict the amount of stress that students are facing. Basically, it looks to reduce, it's specifically at the end of the marking period, which tends to be kind of like a cramping period for us. And basically, it tries to restrict the amount of tests we have within 10 days of the end of the marking period. We're still figuring it out and seeing, I think students are still kind of getting used to it, seeing if they like it. But I'll come back next month to let you guys know how everything is. But as of right now, VHS is doing really great. All the classes are doing pretty awesome, and student spirit is way above. So yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Talk to us about the, I'm sorry, Greg.
Is the game tomorrow night or Friday night?
For which one? For football?
Football. Sorry.
Yes, it's tomorrow.
Friday
Oh,
night.
sorry, Friday night.
Friday night. It's okay. We're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Way ahead.
Middlesex is undefeated. It's a big game.
Haley mentioned the PSATs, and certainly on Mrs. Butler's birthday, October 16th, we have sophomores and juniors taking the PSATs. We have 8 seniors who were commended for their performance in the past, and I want to welcome those invited National Merit students to come up, turn around, and look at the group. I'll try to embarrass you, and then you get to shake hands. Come on, you can do it. All right. I'm going to start with those that I know just a little bit better, and then we'll work our way to those that I may not know as well. So, Edith Poe. She was my student. Edith Poe's academic performance, Edith, this is what your guidance counselors wrote to me about you, is largely unrivaled, with straight A's in the most challenging of schedules. She begs to learn and grow while positively contributing to the community around her. Edith is also a qualified national fencer, where she guides and teaches fencing for the Burnett High School varsity team. She currently holds the title of foil squad captain for the 2nd consecutive season. Edith earned the Regional Division II USA Fencing 2018-2019 foil bronze medal and earned her All-State Girls Foil First Team 2018-2019. A modest leader, she brings out the best in her peers by supporting and encouraging them. She is as quick, if not quicker, to celebrate another success as her own. Congratulations to her. And Lauren Sugarman, you know you're next because you're my other student. As a student looking to pursue a career in medicine, Lauren Sugarman is phenomenal in her academic achievements and has found meaningful ways to connect her academic interests with her extracurricular interests. being involved in Biology League, Earth Science League, along with president of Impact, a charity that supports children with autism, and playing varsity tennis, Lauren Sugarman is quite able to do it all and be successful. Lauren is also an active EMT and member of the Burnsville First Aid Squad when she is not doing other volunteer work at the library. Congratulations. All right, now I'm going to take a guess. Are you Ritika?
Yeah.
All right. Ritika Manathara thrives on making connections beyond the classroom, and she is consistently influenced to incorporate current events into her learning. She inspires and instills this love of learning in younger students and as a tutor at Kumon. In addition to her influence outside of the classroom, Ritika is especially interested in social studies classes. She aspires to advance her studies in political science throughout her undergraduate education. Congratulations. Kind of back in. Are you Nick?
Yeah.
Hey! And Nick, do I pronounce your last name Skoppertus? Skoppertus. Okay, good. Thank you. I don't want to say it. Nicholas Skoppertus is an exceptional student, dedicated athlete, and devoted peer leader whose contribution to Burnett High School is noteworthy. Aside from his infallible straight-A performance since freshman year, Nick is a talented jazz band musician whose love for music has led him to volunteer with the Bedminster Music Camp over the past few years when he's not working at King's. With masterful time management, Nick has built an empire of success and hopes to pursue a STEM major in college next year. Not with us this evening, but also commended, we have Chris Cody, Grace DeScala, Sean St. Clair, and Gordon Rowe. How about a big hand? All right, I just have to shake your hands and make it official. Thank you so much. It's lovely. Congratulations, Lauren. Makes me so proud. Nice to meet you. Excellent. Have a good evening, everybody. All right. Now we're almost ready for Dr. Nigel. I just want to give him a brief intro before he takes the podium. It's not so much about your accomplishments, though, Doctor.
Fair
Sorry, there are many. As many of you know, the district's most recent strategic plan developed a new mission statement a while back. The goal was to come up with something pithy and easy to remember, which is not what we got, and I'd venture a guess that none of us could recite it right now. But after considering it for over a year now, here's what those involved in developing the language got right. The notion that our daily mission is to provide a balanced learning experience for each student. Luckily, we are surrounded by bees in the district, so whether Bedwell, BMS, or Burnett High, these bees can be seen as a daily reminder of the need for this balance. We all know that balance is flexible and nuanced, recognizing that ideas like academic rigor and social emotional needs must exist side by side. While an update on the status of our strategic plan will be arranged for a BOE meeting in the next few months, tonight I want to focus on the wellness aspect of this plan, specifically at the high school. For a large swath of our latest strategic plan focused on health and wellness, and tonight we will discuss the next chapter of this work. So yes, grants have funded training for counselors in mindfulness-based stress reduction, and the Headspace app was procured for teachers. And the district's HSAs have facilitated and funded presentations around mental health topics over the past few years, from Dr. Michael Bradley's presentation on crazy stress to screening screenagers, to Christina Todaro's presentation on mindfulness and technology, and panel discussions discussing social media, including local PD, mental health experts, and the county prosecutor's office. Our high school SAC has given parent presentations like 15-minute child break, and we have had local expert like Community in Crisis and Paul Lavella from Summit Behavioral Health present information about vaping and current drug trends to parents and staff. We have hosted student wellness fairs with representatives from community health and wellness agencies, and the high school's faculty and student stress committee has planned Laugh More, Stress Less weeks. The board has adopted a random student drug testing as a way to help empower students to make wise choices. Curricularly, the high school has established grading floors to ensure that students' transcripts truly reflect their learning. and instituted no homework weekends that Haley referenced. Oh, and the testing, right? To help students find some balance in their busy lives. From a personnel standpoint, we added a K-12 Director of Guidance position and a psychologist position, and have reconfigured the administrative team to fully support student services. Tonight, Dr. Nigel will be talking to you about the next step along this road, the adoption of a new schedule. For scheduling is a lever with power to enhance the day-to-day experiences of students. The rotate and drop schedule is the first step the district is taking to impact the daily demands placed on students from a scheduling standpoint. And we anticipate continuing our efforts once the schedule has been adopted. As many of you are aware, Somerset County high schools, the state of New Jersey as a whole, and the country continue to explore other options, such as later start times for high school students. We are fully engaged in these conversations and look forward to our continued work in this arena, but tonight we will start with the first step along the road, the changes we plan for next year. It's all you, Dr. Knight. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. I appreciate the time. You'll see in a minute, I spent a lot of time researching about this. So yeah, if you want to come see the presentation, just. So in EduTalk, we call it the bell schedule. It's the class schedule, right? It's when we ring the bell. And you'll see this isn't something that we started talking about yesterday. This actually started back in 2015-16. We're talking about 5 school years ago. And at that point, it was a volunteer committee of teachers who got together and said, okay, should we look into this further? Is it something that we want to look into? Is it worth our time? Is it worth me going to the superintendent's board saying, let's look at this on a larger scale? And so that was the first thing that we did. And the recommendation was, yes, let's look at this. Let's look at a variety of options. So in the 2016-17 school year, we got a full committee together, and I'll show you who that committee is in a moment. We have some people actually here who are on that committee. Teachers, parents, students, and administrators researching a bell schedule. We actually took a field trip in a bus and went and actually visited a bell schedule, and I'll talk about that experience in a little bit as well. And then we made a recommendation to the curriculum committee. There was some things that we were recommending in there that we needed some movement, and physical education minutes, you have to have 150 minutes a week, and so there was some discussion there that we said, okay, we like this, but can we do this? And the answer was, no, we can't. So then 2018-19, we went back and said, okay, we can't do the ideal schedule, so let's go to option B. And I went back to the committee and I said, listen, option A can't work. Can we do option B? And the committee said, yeah, let's go with that. That still is much better and a better proposal. We'll talk about what that looks like. And then this school year, at the end of 18-19 and 19-20, I went back to, science is interesting with the lab, and you'll see that in a minute. So I actually met with the science department and said, here's what I'm looking at with minutes, what do you think? They gave me some really good feedback and said, okay, like we need this time, can you move this here, move that there? So we tweaked a little bit of that schedule. And again, I'm giving you the overview. I'll get much, much deeper into the weeds. There's the committee. As you can tell, there were a lot of people on that bus. And I had everybody, one person, I really felt it was important to have one person from every department. We had Ms. Butler back when she was the Director of Guidance. We had a bunch of administrators, 2 students, 2 parents, a lot of perspectives there. Mr. Folia is here tonight, Mr. Heeman spoke on that committee, really gave a lot of feedback. So what did that committee do? We had multiple meetings, and the first thing we did is said, okay, what are we working with? What is good, and what are some things that we'd like to see different about our current bell schedule? We discussed, we didn't just say this is the only one. What's out there? There's the A-B schedule. So you take 4 classes on day A, 4 classes on day B, they're 84 minutes. The 4x4, you take 4 classes for a semester and then you get that whole course. And then you go to the next semester and you take 4 classes again. That's 84 minutes as well. The committee strongly felt that 84 minutes was too long. We're at 42 right now. You'll see that in a minute. And they basically said, let's not even look at any schedules that have 84 minutes. That's too much of an adjustment. We don't want that. And then the rotate and drop. And that was the other one that we looked at that it's interesting. That's the one that we're going to recommend, so see more about that. But the committee liked that because it's not 84 minutes. It's about 56 to 60 minutes. You'll see which one, kind of how we got to that. We did some research among staff, students, and parents. Got some great data from students at the time. Staff gave us some feedback, and it's mixed. And again, this is not perfect. But again, it's trying to get, okay, what are the benefits? What are the negatives? How do we work through this? Oops, and then we did make a consensus to pursue at that time back in I think 2017-18, make a recommendation. At that time, we wanted to pull science out of lab PE. That changed based on the number of minutes in the day. So this is our current schedule, or the Bell schedule. This is what your students do at the high school every day if you have students. As you can see, it's the same thing for the most part. That Wednesday, if you have an A or honors level class, you will have that lab, so that's the only variation. But again, it's 7:45 to 2:41 with 42. You can see periods 2 and 9 are a little bit different in terms of a little longer for announcements. But it's 42 minutes, it's the same classes every day. There are 8 passing times of 4 minutes each. So it is, in my opinion, and you can ask your students, it's fast, it's stressful, it's a lot. And the really, what taught me that is back, I don't remember what year it was, but I'll say it was 2016, 17. One of my administrators associations nationally was encouraging principals to do a shadow a student day. So I put it out there on Twitter at the time and said, anybody want me to shadow them coming up next week? And I had a student volunteer. And so I put on jeans and a hooded sweatshirt and I followed that student around. I failed 2 quizzes that day. But that's not the point. The point was when I came out, one of the big takeaways I took from that day is, this is madness. I was exhausted after one day, and these guys have to do it every day. It's exhausting. And why is that a good idea? Why is it natural to do 9 things in one day for 42 minutes? And what really got me was the transitions from class to class. I remember going from Dr. Hogg to Miss Monroe, and I needed to fill up my water bottle, and I was late to class, and I was like, this is crazy. And I was trying to really do what the kids do, and they do it every day, and they do a good job of it. We have 42-minute periods. I'm constantly sitting in lessons where teachers are really engaged, and they're making that point, and then the bell goes on. And it cuts it short. Some of the feedback we got from students was, I need more time. The teachers are just getting ready to go to hit that point, hit that closure, check for understanding, and the bell rings. Again, talked about the transitions from class to class. It's hard. We have students, your National American students who go from AP Physics to AP US to AP English. Those teachers are using 42 minutes. I can see some of my teachers in here. We go bell to bell. And put the bell to bell for students, 4 minutes to reset your brain to go to a different topic. That's hard to do. Period 1, you get the same class every morning. I think students, I don't know about you guys, look at your schedules when they come out and go, oh, what do I have first period? What am I going to be late to every day? No, these students are not late, but students are tired in the morning. They don't sleep a lot. They do a lot of work. That 7:45 bell hits, and it's the same class every day. This is the time of year where our field hockey teams are getting dismissed, and our soccer teams are getting released early because we have to play early. And if it's the same class, if you have AP, U.S. history or AP Calc BC 9th period, the schedule creates that. We can't say don't run AP schedules 9th period. We'll never get all our APs in. So it hits the same period every day. It's not ideal. It is what it is. Those students miss those courses. Again, I talked about that idea, 7 or 8 classes a day, saturated with information. Kids say they're exhausted by 8th or 9th period. And if it's their hardest class, they don't have that mental aptitude or that fortitude to really get through that class. And here, it's not the amount of time. 4 minutes is a race for this building. It's the number of times that we do that in a day. 8 times 4 is 32. It's the number of passing times. The homework, and that's a separate topic we could have a whole different presentation on, but every class, every day, there is homework. And the lack of common time. One of the things we'll talk about is lunch. Depends on what lunch you get. Are your friends in your lunch? Right now we're running 4 lunches, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. 4th lunch starts at 10:06. 10:06, is that right? So it's kind of brunch, but in order to get everybody served, that's what we do, and that is something, so we kind of said, okay, what is our schedule? I will say, I'm not going to say that there weren't strengths to it. Consistency, it's the same thing every day. Some people like that. Hey, I know what to expect. I get there, and I know what class I have, and then I like my days organized. So not everybody said that there were weaknesses to that. There were some positives, but the vast people said these are the problems with our current schedule. So again, I went out and said, well, what are other schools doing? In education, we try to share. It's not proprietary information. What else is out there? And so other local high schools that implement a rotate and drop schedule. You can see some of the schools. I try to draw from schools that we tend to compare ourselves to with size and demographics and the level of academic performance. I have 2 highlighted. One is Governor Livingston. I was an assistant principal there under this spell schedule. So I had I liked it. I worked under it. I was not a teacher under it, so I never taught with that period. But as an assistant principal, I actually loved the common lunch because I got to get out and see almost every teacher and almost every student to talk to them, to engage. It was a nice time to have that sense of community. I also highlighted Madison because that is the school that we visited that really kind of gave us a good feel, and we got to see it during the day. We had teachers to talk to their teachers. We actually have a former teacher working there now who can kind of compare the two schedules, and I'll talk about that later. Our students got to talk to their students, and they're very similar to us, almost exactly the same size. So I like that as a visit, and also just kind of reconnected with my colleagues at Governor Livingston because they underwent that transition maybe 10 years ago. But you can see some of the schools, and then I thought to myself, I've been saying anecdotally, I feel like we're in the minority. I feel like we are getting, more and more schools are getting to an alternate bell schedule, and I said, well, am I right, or am I just saying that? So then I just picked the NJ Monthly Top 20, which we were in the last time it came through, and here's your breakdown. 13 schools have the rotate and drop. One is on the 4x4, that's McNair Academy in Jersey City. They actually have a time for brunch on their schedule, which I thought was great. I don't have that in my recommendation, but you never know. AB, that's Montgomery, they do that. Straight 8 with common lunch, that's Milburn. I think they're trying to kind of transition to this. And then there were 4 schools that have a straight 8 or 9 period day. We are one of them. Ridge is the other, and if you read the newspaper, Jake here, they are putting on a $6.69 million edition. I've read that so many times that I've had it memorized now. So they're doing a massive move and construction just to go to this bell schedule. Mountain Lakes is trying to go to the bell schedule. They've seen some turnover of late. I did read some information that they wanted to go to it. There's only one school in the top 20 that has no interest as far as I can see online. That's Haddonfield. Maybe they're going to go to it eventually. But it kind of said, okay, we got to look into this. This is something we need to look into. If there's this many schools that are doing it and saying that they really like it, I think it's something that we need to research more and pursue. So why? Why did it come to the rotate and drop? And that's really the biggest question, right? Is why this bell schedule? Why are we spending all this time and resources moving? And again, I say weaknesses, but is our schedule broken? No, we're doing a great job here. It's always about doing a little bit better. So to me, that instructional period is really important. I start with academics. I always start with academics. And the next part is I'm going to go to social emotional. But 42 to 58 minutes. Greater opportunities for formative assessment, cooperative group activities, class discussions to get to, okay, what did we learn today? What was this lesson about? We've done this wonderful activity. Instead of trying to cram in and just say it as they're running out the door, literally to their next class. Okay, what do we learn today? What are we doing? What are we doing tomorrow? And I really feel that that's important. And I think it's going to be beneficial. And then less classes in a day. You'll see the drop part of that doesn't have a 9-period day. And there certainly is stress created by a 9-period day. And if we have an organizational mechanism that creates stress, isn't it our obligation to look at that, to change that? And I feel that the answer is yes. Homework. Instead of having every class every day, with the drop, you don't have homework in every class every day. Now, a teacher might say, I'm not going to see you tomorrow, and may adjust that, and we'll work through that. But I do feel like that was one of the things the students gave back in their feedback, that would certainly be a positive. Less tests in a day. We just did put in the last 10 days of the marking period. They wouldn't be able to restrict the days each department could test. This would kind of do it naturally. And again, good transition to a college schedule. Also a little less monotony. I don't know if I have that later, but college schedule, transition. We're not a college. I'm aware of that. Well, most of our students are going on to college, so we want to make sure that we keep that in mind. By getting rid of a certain number of passing periods, you actually increase the instructional time. Common lunch, and I'll talk more about that. I have a whole slide to that, but I believe it's positive for students and staff. It really builds a community. Students can interact with their peers, their friends, staff. They can go see staff if the staff are available. I say it actually helps them make up if the staff have the time. It's not always going to happen, but it's more likely to happen. Whereas now it's luck of the draw if the teacher's schedule lines up with your free period. It's just random as opposed to saying we have a purposeful period where we can facilitate that. Clubs and activities. We have a lot of students who participate in 3 sports. If they want to meet with their student council or their class officers, they can do that during lunch. Again, we want them to take a break. We want them to eat lunch. However, if they need to find a group, we're increasing the likelihood that they'll have availability, which I think is a good thing. By rotating, we mitigate the first and last period impact due to the rotation. So 4 different classes will hit that first period, and 4 different classes will hit that last period. And the rotation, one of the things that kids said was it's boring. It's the same thing every day. Some people like consistency. Some people like variety. For those who like variety, they get to see different classes every day. It mixes it up a little bit. All right, so what would it look like? Hope my color coding doesn't mess you up too much. So you can see there, you take a minute. We've got 58-minute periods, 6 in a day. There are 4 classes that would rotate in the morning with the drop. So on day 1, you have classes A, B, and C, and we'll give those classes names in just a moment. You don't have class D. That drops. In the afternoon, E, F, and G, you don't have class H. And then that changes the next day. And I'll talk about labs in a minute. You can see the times of the labs. But that's your generic. So what does that look like? And I just put in the generics. I didn't put in English 1 or biology or anything like that. So where this changes, if you look at day 2, when your science rotates and it gets to where it backs up or is adjacent or touches the lunch, you would then have a lab. So on that day 2, you would have class in your science classroom from 9:49 to 11:09. That's your 80-minute lab if you have an A or an honors level. AP is a little bit different. We need more time there. So that would actually pull out of a study hall, and I'll show you, well, I don't have an example of that, but I can have a slide talking about that. And I'll put this presentation on the website so we can really look at this, because I know it's a lot of information. If you have any questions about the mechanism and how it works, you can certainly reach out to me. But this is the iteration that we are at right now. I'm not saying it's final, but we've gone through quite a few, and this is the best that we've done so far. And I think it's pretty good. So this is the question I keep getting, right? I started writing this presentation, and I was putting headlines, and I said they all became questions, because those are the questions that I get. Believe it or not, this is not something that I worry that much about. I've seen Government Livingston have 1,050. Hunter Central does this with, I think they have over 30,000, maybe more. Watching Hills does it with 1,800. A lot of bigger schools do this. We have a wonderful facility for 800 students. Right now we're about 815. So the cafeteria, we have to maximize seating, make sure we have the max number of tables and chairs and still having proper egress for fire. And we got to look at that very carefully. The upper gym, this is what I was just talking to Jason, who's old school, uses their auxiliary gym as a cafeteria. That's what Government Livingston does. That's what Madison does. Most schools will take their gym that is not their top gym. So if their A gym and B gym, our lower gyms are bigger gym. They'll take the other gym. They'll set up tables. And that requires some work, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But that could create, I would say, another 300-ish seats. We're trying to get students eating the most natural, not sitting in the hallway cramming food and providing a reasonable place for them to sit. We also have a lot of open areas. If you actually think about it and you walk out here, you could put tables that fold with little seats here outside the PAC lobby. If you're ever down by the chorus room, if you're down by the band room, we've got a lot of different areas. Right here, I mean, you could probably fit, I don't know, 10 tables easily if you wanted to in this area. Not every school has that. So I really think that we have a lot of areas that we could use. How that looks and how that will change the way in which we keep the building clean, that's something we're going to have to work on. And then, of course, we have courtyards. We have all kinds of things outside. That is obviously weather dependent. If Kelly brought up the lock on the gate, so I won't get too into this right now, but we could expand senior privilege to juniors if we needed to. All right, so how do science labs work? So A and H labs, if you go back, I won't go back to the schedule, will come out of lunch, one-time rotation. So they have an 80-minute lab period. AP is different. Right now, AP science classes are a 7-credit course. And so they actually wouldn't lose much time at all. It'd be just about the same. What would happen is if you took an AP science class, you'd also have to take a study hall, same way you do now, and that once every cycle, you would have the double class period. It's a long time, but we need to make sure that they do not lose that time because we have those 7-credit classes have been very successful. Our AP science program is really flourishing. So that was something I prioritized when I created this, was to make sure that AP science didn't lose any time. And I will say the A and H, it's a little bit shorter, but I kept it closer. I didn't meet with the science department. They said, you got to give us more time. You're cutting too much. So I did. I got it a little bit closer, and I feel pretty good about it right now based on their feedback. And there are no labs taken out of PE Health, so students who do PE Health will have that every day, and if they have an exemption, they'll have that full study hall 3 times every 4 days. All right, so what do we need for this to happen? We need additional custodians. We need, and again, how many and how, we be flexible and creative with that, but we can't have one person setting up all the tables and cleaning up. It's just not going to work that way. The cafeteria right now is contained, everyone eats there, we have one custodian in that facility. When you spread it out to the whole school, it's going to look a lot different. We need additional lunch tables. We need a lot of additional lunch tables. Mashios, we can't serve everyone through the same cafeteria line right now. We have a really beautiful kitchen, if you've ever seen it down there. It needs to serve more, they need to kind of expand their offerings. We would also have a second serving station in the upper gym, where students could use their code and still order more pre-made stuff. They're not going to have the full kitchen there, but we would need additional serving station for Mashios. I even forgot to say in my presentation, we still have the media center where we have an eating area in there as well. So we utilize every eating area that we have. And we need professional development for teachers. And I've really worked with the supervisors to talk to their staff and say, what do you need? Because an English department may ask for something different than a science department or a math department. What is it that you need? Who can we bring in? How do we go about this? Because I think it varies very much by department. And then to go back to Ridge, they realized they didn't have the space, and Dr. Dempsey and I kind of looked at each other and go, we feel pretty good about this, but are you sure? And are you sure about it? And so we wanted to make sure that not only were we sure, but that somebody who's done this for other schools was sure about it too. So we brought in a consultant, his name is Elliot Marenblum. We spent 2 days in a war room, hunkering down, looking at bell schedules and looking at facilities. And the results
He
were...
is the consultant that pointed out to Ridge that they needed to spend all that money.
Yes.
So we said,
Yeah, so we said, hey,
right.
how are we doing? Yeah, I was going to bring that up. And he said, you have ample classroom space. He looked at the science teachers who are all in their own classrooms right now, and those are, if they do labs, they can't do a lab in an English room, so they have to have a dedicated science room. And he looked at it and said, no, you're good there. And that was a big sigh of relief. And this I felt pretty good about, but he also said he has sufficient facilities for the common lunch. Other concerns that we discussed, and we said, here's our contract, do the schedules adhere to the current contract language? They do. And of course, we're going to work with the association and make sure that we're hitting all those things. We know them very well, but that's important to us. And then also we've shared students and staff. How is that going to impact VOTEC? How is that going to impact teachers who teach at the middle school? And there will be an impact, we'll have to be thoughtful about that, but we're also able to look at those schedules, create a schedule and say, I think this can work, here's what we need to do. So we're trying to make sure that there weren't roadblocks that we couldn't get through, and I felt pretty good saying that there were no major roadblocks. There's going to be bumps, any of this we're going to have to kind of work through, but I didn't feel like there were any major roadblocks. It was really nice to hear that a consultant felt the same way. So what are the next steps? As I said, ongoing professional development. We have to have these items approved in the budget. We've got to continue the discussion with Mashios. They've asked me a couple times, are we really going to the one lunch? That's the plan. And I get that. And I talked to the staff at the beginning of the year about change. Change is never comfortable, change is never easy. But to me, when it's something that's going to have this much of an impact on the well-being of our students, it's something that we have to go through. And I know that it's going to be difficult. Sometimes I go, I really want to do this, or I really like, because we're doing really well right now, but I really do. I think it's that important. The master schedule, that is going to keep us up at night, because the master schedule isn't there. Now, mind you, there's no less classes. Students still get to request 8 classes in a lunch. It's just going to be a little bit different, because instead of having 9 periods to schedule, we have 8 because everyone's eating at the same time. So, but we feel like we can do it. We feel like we have the space, and we have 2 great master schedulers in the building, Dr. Corbett and Ms. Jamie Walker, and I'm confident that they were in on those discussions with Mr. Marenblum, and they were really, really good, and I feel like we can do it. And then again, we got to keep talking about it. The conversations I've had with the students, I keep bringing it up to students and be like, what do you think? Do you think this is going to make an impact? And everything I get back is positive. I think this is going to be good. I like it. It sounds like interesting. Can we have that? I think my seniors are like, can we have that now? No, we can't, but we can have it next year. Staff, again, what do we need to do? I know it's a big change. What are we not thinking about? What do we need to do to prepare for this? Parents in the community. I really think it's a positive change. I think it's going to make a tremendous impact. We also need to think through all the things that it's going to change, and really look at it that way. Future considerations with regard to shifting academics. Dr. Dempsey brought it up earlier, school start time. Is that something that we need to look at down the road about what time we start for the day? I know Bridgewater's putting the pedal down and looking at that pretty closely. And I should say Bridgewater's looking to change their bell schedule Somerville's changing it next year. A lot of schools are really moving in that direction. And then one thing that I'm happy to talk to anybody about is about marking periods and why we have marking periods. It's something that we want to continue with. We just accept that it's part of education, but marking periods were created back in the day. We had paper grade books, and we needed to do calculations and put them in, and now you punch a button and your grade book is up to date. So we're looking at all of these things. There's a lot of conversations that happen, and a lot of thought needs to go into this before we make any change. And so Karen DeTrollio, I referenced her earlier. She's at Madison High School, and my science folks here remember Karen as well. What she said after we went to Madison, and actually she came in and talked to the staff, was after working within the rotate and drop, I would never want to go back to a straight 9 schedule. And all the teachers and governments that I talked to really felt that way as well. They felt this is a better schedule for kids, it was a better schedule for staff, and that it was a better schedule than the straight 9. So that's all that I have. Hope I haven't talked your ears off too much. Happy to answer any questions you guys have. No clip art.
Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Nigel before we move on?
I just completely confused everybody and no one has any. Right. So your great question is VOTEC students. So we have AM and PM VOTEC students. And so this will fit in because they do their AM and then they have PM classes at the high school, or they have AM classes at the high school and then go to VOTEC. And so we looked at the timing of when they
mess up. It'll fit in with their schedule.
Correct. They would do the same thing that they currently do. It would just change the way when they get here, where they go. Yes, of course.
Hi, will this impact class size or levels of support offered?
Would impact class size. It will have an impact on class size, but again, it comes down to sections because we're trying to schedule 8 sections instead of 9, or 8 periods instead of 9. So I see maybe a little bit of an impact. Our class sizes are really good right now, but I don't see to the point where it would become problematic. I think we have the space for it.
Levels of support will
Can you be a little bit more specific about what you're talking about?
so special needs, anything
Um, Yeah, no, we would not eliminate any offerings. There would not be any restrictions to what we currently offer. We would offer everything still in our program studies. Thank you.
Thank you so
All
much,
right, thank
Dr.
you. I
Nigel,
appreciate
appreciate it.
That concludes the superintendent report. Public questions and comments for actionable agenda items. We very much welcome input from the public. Public comments are welcome at this time on any agenda item. Towards the end of the meeting, there is a second public forum on any topic. Please state your name and address. Comments are limited to 3 minutes, but an individual may speak a second time after all others who wish to speak on the topic have been heard. Please understand that our public forums are not structured as question and answer sessions, but are offered as opportunities to share your thoughts with the board. In instances where the board feels there is a misunderstanding or inaccuracy, I or our superintendent may address the comment. In accordance with New Jersey statute, the board will not discuss matters regarding specific personnel. Public questions and comments will be limited to 30 minutes. Thank you for your input. Do we have any public questions and comments on actionable agenda items tonight? Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion to approve the minutes? Motion to approve the minutes. Thank you, Kathy. Second? Second. Thank you. Okay, report on finance facilities and operations. So we need to vote on that.
Yeah, of course, call everybody's name. Mr. Baker.
Yes.
Ms. Cooper.
Yes.
Mr. DiGiacchino.
Yes.
Mr. Mayo.
Yes.
Mr. McDonald.
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro.
Yes.
Mrs. Tover.
Yes.
Ms. Virtue.
Yes.
Ms. Birch.
Yes.
Mrs. Lees.
Yes. Okay. Bob?
The Finance, Facilities, and Operations Committee met yesterday for about 2 hours and 15 minutes. And I'll go over the highlights, and then I'll ask for questions after we move to the motions. First item we talked about was an option for starting school before Labor Day in the school calendar. So Colleen Butler gave us some information about options about what a calendar may look like if we had the students start before Labor Day. Labor Day is very late, the latest it can be. So we're going to look at options, and she's going to reach out to all the stakeholders, parents, teachers, administrators, and I guarantee if we get everybody in this room, we'd all have a different opinion about whether that's good or bad. But we're going to do it. We're going to talk about it for the next few months, and we're going to make a decision. It's not going to be easy, but everybody be patient and calm, and we'll get through it, okay? The second topic was we talked about the rotating drop schedule, which Dr. Nagel gave us a Cliff Notes version of what we just saw there, and we asked a few other questions. And some of us who didn't ask questions, we got a few questions answered yesterday. Third item we talked about was the middle school sports program, and Dr. Dempsey is starting her analyzation of the middle school sports program. She gave us a lot of spreadsheets that talk about what the parents pay, what the board pays, what the other expenses are, and what for the last 5 years, so the committee can see what the spend is. It's about $100,000 it costs to run a program. So what she's going to do, she's going to talk to all the stakeholders in this room in the middle school and come up with, the objective is to look at the middle school to see whether it's aligned more equitably with our high school sports. And is it the correct way to spend money or not the way to spend money? Should we change it? Should we even change the way high school sports are funded? So she's going to work on that and talk to all the stakeholders. So again, that's a difficult conversation. So I request everybody to be patient, listen to other people. We will get through it. Fourth item we talked about was the comprehensive maintenance plan, which is on your agenda tonight for approval. And that's a state requirement talking about what we're going to spend on maintenance this year, next year, and compare what we've done for the last 10 years. So there wasn't anything exciting to report on that. Otherwise, we're spending $300,000 to $400,000 a year for all 4 buildings. On average, it goes up and down, but it's in your packet. We talked about the YMCA summer camp contract, and I'm not going to talk about what we talked about because we can't negotiate in public, but we want to come up with a new contract with the YMCA to hold their camp next summer, which is about 38 days using our building. So we want to come up with a new contract that's fair and to both parties. So more will come in the next few months on that. We talked just a short while on the GPSs for the school buses. Gretchen and Heather are going to do some more research on the application. There's an app that we can use that will help staff and parents to understand where school buses are and where they aren't. But they're looking into what's the best use of that app. There's a lot of options on that app, so more to follow on that. Then we talked about the financial audit, which was just completed. The auditor came up with one recommendation and a few other findings. And so because that's going to take a while for us to talk about it, he's going to come back to our finance committee next month and explain to us what he found and why he's making his recommendation. Will allow us to ask questions, and that way when we approve the report in December or January, I'm not sure which date.
It'll depend on those GASB 75 numbers.
GASB, which is on state pension numbers, and I'm not an accountant, so I don't know why the state makes us do that, but they do. I'm confident we'll have it by January, hopefully by the December board meeting, so more to come on that. We also looked at our long-range facility plan, which hasn't been updated in 2 years. So Heather's going to strip out the projects that have been done, like the generators, the middle school recess area, and some other items, so we can look at what's left on the long-range plan, and then she'll get her administrators to tell us what projects they see that are critical for the 2021 years, so we can put those in the budget if we can afford them. So we'll have to prioritize those. So that will be done next time. And then finally, we talked about fundraising. There's fundraising applications on the agenda tonight. There was 12, there might be 13 now, so we got that. And that's my report, and I'd like to move finance numbers 1 through 9, and then the ones that are on the addendum, which I think maybe misnumbered that one, number 7, is that correct? On the addendum, is that right?
5 has additional fundraisers.
I'm not sure that would fit on the other 7,
Like 7 should be
I just noticed that.
Second.
10.
Maybe that should be another, should that be 10?
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay, so let's make that, so I'm moving items 1 through 10. Do I have a second? Any questions on any of that? No questions? Okay.
Such a thorough report.
Thorough report, okay, I'm sorry, I'm expecting a lot of questions. Okay, anyway,
Okay, roll call, yes. Mr. Baker?
yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. DiGiacchino?
Yes.
Mr. Mail?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Mrs. Tover?
Yes.
Ms. Virtue?
Yes.
Ms. Birch?
Yes.
Mrs. Lees?
Yes.
All right, then I want to move on the facilities, action items 1 through 4. There's 1 on the addendum and 3 on the main. Do I have a second for those 4? Any questions on any of those items? That's the maintenance stuff.
All right, roll call. Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. DiGiacchino?
Yes.
Mr. Mail?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Mrs. Tover?
Yes.
Ms. Virtue?
Yes.
Ms. Birch?
Yes.
Mrs. Lees?
Yes. Thank you. Janice, curriculum?
Okay, yes. Curriculum committee met on October 15th. Everyone on the committee was in attendance. And we began our meeting by discussing the initiatives passed on to curriculum from community relations. And before I just want to give you a little bit of background. Years ago, you'll see how it's all connected in a minute, but years ago, the Bernardsville Garden Club had a middle school junior gardeners club, and they talked about reviving that again. So, as a member of the Bernardsville Garden Club, it was my task to look into the possibility of reviving this. So, we and I kept thinking about how this could happen, and we thought about encouraging middle school students to continue their interest in gardening, an interest that was perhaps started and nurtured on the elementary school level through the Bedwell Garden. So in essence, the Bernardsville Garden Club is interested in implementing a junior gardeners club at the middle school. I brought forth this idea to the Community Relations Committee. As our discussion continued, the committee thought of the idea of forming a partnership with Bernardsville Garden Club and the middle school. And we thought it would be a worthwhile endeavor. Having a well-established and sizable garden at the Bedwell, we thought it would be a natural progression to continue to promote student interest in gardening at the middle school. A lot of young children at Bedwell are very interested in gardening, and it brings, it makes them calm, they learn a lot, and we really, as we thought about it, we thought it would be a shame to just drop it as it has been. Why not continue it and serve both purposes? So for now, we are looking at participation of K-8 students, And to this end, the committee recommended the district create a stipend position. More will come as the curriculum committee has further discussions on the details of this matter. Then Colleen Butler reported on structural learning experiences, SLEs, to the Community Relations Committee and then to curriculum. This committee was initiated for the benefit of the district's STAR students. STAR stands for Students Transitioning to Adult Responsibilities. Structured learning experiences evolved from a meeting with the Bernardsville Chamber of Commerce in order to form a partnership with Somerset Hill School District. There are great benefits for students to get out into the community to sample various job opportunities. Therefore, internship opportunities will be created for these students. A similar meeting will take place with the Basking Ridge Business Alliance. Colleen recommended that we expand the program to other interested students in the future. Next, Gretchen gave the committee an update on the VHS rotate and drop schedule, which you have already heard about from high school principal Scott Knight. She also updated the committee on later start times. Several schools in the Somerset County will pilot a later start program. However, Somerset County Superintendent has not released many details.
Just to clarify, Janice, the schools that will be engaged in the pilot, there will be 5 schools across the state that have to span urban, suburban, and rural districts. There has been no information coming from the Department of Education about what the application process looks like, what the criteria will be for that selection. So it's larger than just the county. Somerset County high schools are engaged in a dialogue talking about this idea, but I just want to make that distinction.
Thank you for the clarification.
You are welcome.
We feel like as though it's prudent for us to work out all the pros and cons and issues may arise from moving into a later start time. So we are in the process of exploring and learning about this before implementing such a program. And, just as an aside, one of the main reasons for piloting a program really is sleep deprivation, which young teens go through. So, let's see. A search indicated, Gretchen also talked about this to us. The search indicated there is no document which specifies when curriculum has been implemented and updated. It would be helpful to us as a district to know where curriculum has been and where it should go. In other words, we need a curriculum master plan. More to come. All field trips were reviewed and approved. And next, chef. There was no grant cycle for this fall, and a meeting is planned to solicit new members to ensure the continuation of this organization. The last item that we discussed was the AP scores. We will continue to study AP scores. So I would like to move items 1 through 5 on the agenda and 2 on the addendum. Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I just want to mention in terms of the Somerset County conversation about later start times, Colleen and I attended a roundtable last month. And it was a lot of superintendents and some board presidents. And everybody in the county agrees that this is a worthwhile end, but there are logistical issues that need to be worked out, mainly busing and the costs associated with that. They will be redoing this type of a presentation, which I think I sent to all board members in November, and anybody who wants to go hear that doctor speak, he was very compelling, and I'm going to go back, and I encourage any of you to join.
I'd also, sorry, Greg, I just had a quick point on that. I also
several of us attended at New Jersey School Boards last week, a session presented by Chatham High School and West Morris Regional. And, you know, two highly successful schools where the superintendents, one was a superintendent, one was a principal, I think, or were they both superintendents?
The superintendent in Chatham had been the high school principal previously.
Thank you. So at any rate, it was really eye-opening, and they talked a lot about what they were doing. They're highly ranked, and you know, there was some laughing about what rankings really mean, but nonetheless, more importantly than a rank, what was contributing to their student success, and several of the items that they really stood behind and believed was later moving the school year early by 8 days. That was
West Morris. That was only a high school only district.
Yes, yep. But and obviously, again, as Bob has said, there's a lot of consideration into that. So, but it was part of what they deemed to be very successful for a lot of different reasons, as well as reducing student stress. All of it was under the guise of really the social and emotional well-being of their students, that they were working on programs such as later start times, not have been implemented yet, but things they were considering, moving the start times earlier, and that they felt that these were things that were critical to the well-being of their students, but also the academic success of their students. So it was a really interesting presentation. So, and kind of nice to see some of the schools that had made some of these adjustments, just what they had learned through the process, how they implemented and rolled it out. So
we are talking about this at our superintendent roundtables every month, and certainly I think you saw the work that Scott has engaged in over the past few years. Our thought process was that because he is so far down that path, it made more sense for us to pursue that at this point in time while we continue to explore and have these conversations about what might come next.
And just to add what Heather was saying and a little bit what Jamie was saying, that sleep deprivation is really very, very important. And for a number of reasons, which I won't get into now, but sleep deprivation does impair students' ability to be alert, pay attention, solve problems, cope with stress, and retain information. And it talked about how it can lead to a lot of other serious problems like maybe drug use or alcohol use or a number of things. It was very interesting. You might want to look at the National Sleep Foundation. It gives you more information about that.
A question on the professional development. I noticed that Lisa Drew has back-to-back vaping.
Professional development. She's not vaping.
No, she's not vaping, back-to-back. And I have no issues with any of the, the professional development, particularly related to vaping, but it just prompted me, it's been brought to my attention several different times of sort of ongoing vaping in the high school. And I was just curious as to, that just prompted me to think, well, we're doing back-to-back. I'm hearing that, so what are we seeing, what are we doing?
Right.
And
certainly,
do we need to do more?
I don't know, Colleen, if you have specifics, I can tell you, Tim, that you can see that these are both local events. Certainly that is a topic that is under discussion again at the county level. We have talked about a variety of approaches in this. I don't have any information at this point in time that the problem, if you will, is better, worse, or different than perhaps it was, 6 months ago. But it is something that we are concerned about from a standpoint, quite frankly, of student health. We all know in the news that we're now looking at kids and adults who are dying. And the more you learn, the more you realize that just the process of the vaporizing is certainly dangerous. So we want to have our SAC learn all she can about
Right,
that.
I think some of the more recent information that has been coming out about vaping has really shifted our approach in that it's not just our SAC who's looking at that. she's also working with our school nurse. You know, we're talking to our school physician so that we can gather as much information as we can to really get the information out there to kids and parents.
If we like sort of routinized a, you know, kind of like checking out bathrooms, those kinds of things.
To the extent that we have personnel available, certainly.
I know, I understand, yeah. And then are we, what are we doing from, particularly in the high school, with respect to sort of educating the students, sort of bringing this knowledge back in from the professional development and
I
then.
think that's the piece that Colleen is talking
Right,
about from
we're-
a health standpoint.
There's
Well,
also
Yeah, I mean, just like, are we doing, are there structured programs or how are we kind of
working
taking
on
that
planning all
knowledge?
of those right now. Lisa did want to go to these events so that we can roll out. We want to be careful in our rollout. Certainly it's discussion that we've had before at the high school, but I think we have a lot of new information, and I think the information that we're getting now will have a much bigger impact on kids and parents, frankly. Because we have all of that health information that I don't think was as clear even a year ago.
Right.
And just one other point on professional development. I know we have a number of teachers in the high school, I believe it's just restricted to the high school, who are readers for the AP exam. I don't know if that falls under professional development, but I think whatever we can do to kind of support and encourage that is a good thing. There's so many benefits that accrue as a result of those teachers spending time and being given the time to do that reading. I just want to encourage us to do whatever we can to support and encourage more of that kind of professional development around AP readers.
I think it's really for Colleen. I just so very exciting about the SLE program being rolled out for the stars. What's your thoughts around timelines for other students who might have an interest?
We're still in the beginning stages. I'm not sure if we'll have it in place for September.
My question is, the vaping, is that, I assume it is part of our code of conduct?
Absolutely, we have policies that address that certainly, and yes, there are consequences. The recent conversations in the county address the fact that that response can't happen in isolation, and that education in terms of the dangers as well as the speed with which somebody can become addicted to this have to be part of our response.
Consequences and code of conduct, I mean, it's still part of that, the same as anything else.
Absolutely, hand in hand.
And am I allowed to ask how many instances of vaping?
I couldn't answer that question, Greg, without going back and getting that information for you.
And then just to Jamie, in terms of a later schedule, how much of a stumbling block was the athletic programs in different schools?
Oh, well, I think countywide, everybody doesn't feel like that is a problem. They feel like, especially if you do it on a county basis, since people are sort of doing it as a group, not that that's gonna necessarily happen all at the same time, but people want to move in that direction, and they feel like most of us have a start time which is within 20 minutes of each other. So if you have a game and you have to move it 15 minutes, there's flexibility. I don't think the athletic directors feel that's a problem.
And Mr. Hoppy did not as either.
I think it's more about busing,
Moving
honestly.
the varsity is not an issue, but the varsity JV.
The
plays one after the
transportation
other.
seems to be the big thing that that is a stumbling block on a couple of fronts. We have what people will refer to as two-tier busing. Our first bus goes out and gets middle school and high school students, drops kids off, and then goes back out and gets elementary school kids. Initially, lots of the conversations talked about sort of flip-flopping those. What some schools are now looking at is the possibility of having everybody start at the same time, which from a standpoint of just theoretically, I think appeals to many. The challenge will be that not only are you, if you have everybody being picked up by buses at the same time. There's a cost obviously there, but the county has real issues around a scarcity of physical buses and of drivers. So if you take away the concern around cost and you take away the concern around traffic, you're still left with if you decided to do this tomorrow, would you be able to find the physical buses and the drivers to drive them?
Wouldn't schools flip-flop starting times?
Some
So that
there,
elementary or
and this
middle
is the
school.
reason these are all the things that people talk about. So yes, that is an option. Certainly, we haven't gone out and had those conversations with elementary school parents, middle school parents. The other concern you'll hear people talk about is childcare, that if you have older students who are coming home after school to take care of a younger sibling, that's a real issue too. So, I think, again, we are focused on the rotate and drop. That is the next hurdle, and then we are engaged in these conversations with our counterparts in the county to sort of see how it all flushes out. It did not seem, one thing that Jamie, you had mentioned about the meeting you went to with Colleen, it did not seem that there was necessarily a tangible benefit that could be ascertained in terms of participating in that pilot, based on what you said.
There's no money or anything, and it seemed like the pilot itself, well, there are no details out, but I don't even know, everybody sort of felt like we could just do this ourselves. If we find the ability to, nobody argues that it's not a good idea. I mean, for high school kids, I think it's 12 up, your circadian rhythm is such that what we put them through now is so unnatural.
Circadian rhythm changes,
It's
and also
and
the
it- and-
melatonin sets in at a certain time, that changes too.
One of the
They
things
actually can't go to sleep.
the speaker, his name is Dr. Mandelbaum, and he is a pediatrician, and I think he's the school pediatrician for Princeton schools. And he is actually the doctor who's on this pilot program, so he was speaking, and he has spoken at other things, and he will be speaking at the event in November. He said something to me, or not to me, to the group, which sort of, he said, what we do for these kids now, what we ask of them is like if an adult gets up at 3 a.m. to go to a flight, an airport on a day where you have to travel, for that whole day you feel off because you got up at a different hour than your natural body wanted to wake up. He said that's what these kids feel like every day, and they never get used to it. And when he said that, I thought, that's just awful because when they're so tired, when you're tired, you react to stress differently. You just break down sometimes. They're stressed, they're busy, they're rushing from this to that. They have a lot of academic pressures. They're trying to do extracurriculars. There's not enough hours in the day. And sometimes it leads to bad decision making. Riskiness, just letting off steam. And I get it. I think it's irrefutable. So in terms of operational things that we as a district can do to help alleviate the stress, we're looking at everything, and I think it's our responsibility to do so. Any other comments? Roll call.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. DiGiacchino? Mr. Mail?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Mrs. Tober?
Yes.
Ms. Virtue?
Yes.
Ms. Birch?
Yes.
Mrs. Lees?
Yes. Personnel and policy.
Personnel and policy met on October 29th. Wait, what are our notes here? October 15th, sorry. October 15th. And the committee was there with the exception of Bob and Colleen and Dr. Dempsey. So in policy, I'll start with policy. The committee, we last month talked about our fundraising policy. And there was a new one that had been put out by Strauss Esme, which we had a bit of a discussion on, and had decided to take that back to committee. It had, basically would eliminate the need for the board to approve fundraising. We had also discussed the question of our insurance, and Heather did find out that it is sufficient for the superintendent or designee to approve fundraising and still be covered under our policy. So it does not require the board approval. So that just to answer that question. We discussed it again in committee, and I'll just start by saying at this point we're recommending for several reasons to leave the policy in place as it is existing today, not to adopt the new policy. And we had a good discussion around all the pros and cons. And it came down to, we spent a lot of time last year to better understand where our district was overall with fundraising, to try and achieve some common goals with regards to fundraising. And that this process brought up many beneficial discussions around whether our teams and activities are funded appropriately, the methods being used to raise money, how students and parents feel about fundraising, how the money is being accounted for. And at this point, we felt like we did a lot of work. We made a lot of good progress last year with regards to that. And Dr. Dempsey feels very comfortable with the board staying involved in the process of reviewing those in finance. So at this point, again, we're just recommending that we leave our policy as it is. And we are putting policy and regulation 3218 and policy and regulation 4218 into first reading. Again, we discussed those briefly last time. There was some concern about some of the language that had been changed by Strauss Esme. So we did follow up. Dr. Dempsey reached out to Strauss Esme to get the details of why those changes had been made. We discussed that. I had put the language around some of why those changes have been made in the packet for you guys to review. And so, I think we feel that we're comfortable with the rationale behind that, and we're going to move those into first reading and then move all the policies from last month into second reading. And the last thing we discussed is we're just going to continue to monitor and discuss the topic of earned sick leave as it evolves. Do you want me to, I'll go on and do personnel and then we'll go back and move? Or do you, because personnel is actually technically first on the agenda. Sorry.
That's okay.
Do you, okay, so personnel was quick. We briefly discussed consistency of our written job descriptions. And while this is not a focus at this point, we did learn that New Jersey School Board Association provides templates for all school job descriptions. And we could consider that in the future if we ever wanted to embark on that project. And Dr. Dempsey informed us of the immediate need of 2 full-time paraprofessionals for Bedwell. And we are recommending these positions be filled, immediately. So that was it on those. I would like to move personnel items 1 through 18 on the agenda and 1 through 11 on the addendum. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on personnel items?
Okay, roll call. Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. DiGiacchino?
Yes.
Mr. Mail?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Mrs. Tover?
Yes.
Ms. Rochu?
Yes.
Ms. Birch?
Yes.
Mrs. Lees?
Yes.
I would like to move items 1 and 2 on the agenda for policy. Any discussion?
Just one comment. I just want to express my appreciation to the chairwoman of committee and our dear superintendent for your patience and diligence in following up on the questions that I had with respect to that policy. When we make changes to a policy like that, use, possession, and distribution of substances, I think it warrants a clear read and a diligent review. But you guys were really great to be so patient, and I appreciate that. Just wanted to note that. Thanks.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. DeGiorgino?
Yes.
Mr. Mayo?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Mrs. Tover?
Yes.
Ms. Virtue?
Yes.
Ms. Birch?
Yes.
Mrs. Lees?
Yes. Community relations did not.
No, we didn't use it.
Okay, did not meet. So that concludes the committee reports. Are there any public questions and comments on non-agenda items? Well, I would like to wish all of our colleagues who are up for re-election good luck.
So can I say just one thing on supplementary matters?
Yes, sir.
One thing I did. Five of us attended a school board's workshop. I learned a lot. One presentation I wasn't expecting. And it was a father of one of the children killed at Sandy Hook.
What? Fathers?
The father. He's opened the foundation. You can read about it. I can't remember.
Dylan's
Dylan's
Wings.
Wings.
Yeah, and it's called Wingman. It was the most moving presentation I went to. He talked for half an hour how his son was killed, who had autism, and what his family went through and what he did to cope and what he's doing. He gives this speech all the time. I do not know how the man can do it. I was spellbound. It was, and I'm sure you can watch it on YouTube, I'm sure, but I'd recommend it. The man's remarkable. He and his wife are both there.
It was very moving. I agree with you. What was most interesting about it was his program Wingman is really a program for peer to support each other, and so for kids to be a wingman for someone next to them, and to really create a culture of support and holding each other up, helping each other up, and so that kids don't have to feel alone, or they don't. And something that we did in our lunchroom by mixing it up and having kids sit with kids that they don't normally sit with, that type of thing is just that sort of thing. So whether or not we subscribe to a formal program, I think those kind of peer relationship building, support building activities are really what it's all about, because nobody wants to be alone in this world, and it starts young. So it was very good.
I agree, and I did want to bring up one other item. When we were at the school board's convention, we were lucky enough to see the presentations of some of our students that created inventions. They were wonderful, and our teachers, which
Chuck Lawn, Melissa Leonard, Alan Thurlow. I just could not have asked you guys to go further in helping them, and I think the kids had an amazing time. So.
they did, and they had to answer questions from a panel about their invention.
And they were tough questions.
They were
They were
not
tough
getting
questions.
yeah.
With no preparation, they didn't know the questions.
No.
Yeah, it was
No.
really
They had to think on their feet, and then they had to decide which one of them was going to answer the question.
That's cute.
It really was excellent.
It was. They did a great job.
Yeah. Hats off to all of those participants.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, thank you.
We can watch the World Series.
All right. Good luck. Good luck tonight.